Steve. How's it going, man?
It's good, man. It's good. It's it's good. It's been a little bit hectic time, professionally,
Right.
personally, but I'm excited to be here.
No, I'm glad that you can be here. Steve stood me up, man, for about a month.
I'm telling
It
you,
was hard to get Steve in here.
It was the holidays, man. It was the holiday. You know,
Yeah.
December is just like isn't December like the most stressful month for everyone? Like
That, and I don't think people want to do anything. Like it's like you got Christmas. Well, you just coming off of Thanksgiving, then Christmas, and then you got like New Year. People is getting this time off. Like, especially like government wise, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
So it's like I really don't. And then depending on the weather, right?
Yeah.
We don't do snow well here. We don't want to even be in it. So it's like or just cold in general.
And we've had like a legit winter this
yeah,
year,
for sure,
legit, you know.
And I don't like it.
No, I mean, yeah.
I don't like it.
I lived in
at all.
Chicago for some years, so like
Yeah.
I was like, okay, we got some real snow here, you know. It's cold, like it's cold right now.
Yeah, it's definitely cold.
It's 20 degrees out, so.
But welcome to the platform, man. I'm ready for us to get straight into it, man.
Let's do it.
Nashville native, we unicorns out here, man. Let's get straight into it.
The proud, the few.
The proud and the few. How was it growing up in Nashville for you, man?
Well, I mean, it was great. I mean, I grew up in a different Nashville than the one we got now. But yeah, I mean, I was really blessed. I had an incredible, I was just really blessed. I grew up like west side of Nashville, lived like right over, not Sylvan Park, but like right across the street from there. I actually live right behind Montgomery Bell Academy.
NBA.
Although I did not go there. I saw you had oh man, who was on recently who went to NBA?
Denzel.
Yeah,
Denzel with NBA.
You know, they were always kind of like our rivals a little bit, even though like we can't play sports, so
Right.
like they don't consider us a rival. But I went to USN.
So what is USN for?
University School of Nashville.
Okay.
So it's like, I don't know, there's a bunch of private, so it's a private school. I went K through 12, so you know, that was my schooling, and it's kind of considered like the progressive private school in town. It's it's like, you know, I guess it's where progressive lefties send their kids.
Okay.
In general, I mean, and this is like, you know, I graduated high school in 2003.
Okay.
So things have changed a bit, I'm sure.
Right.
But I remember when I was going to USN, I mean, it was like the high schoolers, we used to see high schoolers, they had like the mohawks and like, you know, they were like just very kind of counterculture. I think it's a little bit less like that now. I think it's a little more buttoned down than it used to be.
Right.
But it was an incredible education. But it was also, you know, like it was a sheltered education. You know,
Right.
I mean, USN gave me a great education, and growing up in West Nashville. But like, you know, it was, you know, I mean, you and I have spoke about it before. How like,
Right.
I mean, my life was like, you know, there are a few spots I went to. I don't think I ever like crossed the Cumberland River until there was until the Titan Stadium. You know, I never went to East Nashville. This is before East Nashville was, you know, a hip hot spot
Right.
for, you know,
The hippies.
for hipsters, for you know, for you know,
Right.
before it'd been gentrified, basically.
exactly.
I mean, you know, it was. So I had, you know, and then it was, you know, literally it's the other side of the river, and you know, I'd never set foot in North Nashville, even though I'd like driven by there on interstate, you know, however many times.
Man, what does that say about like our city, man? Because like you said, we talked about this, and I know for sure, like I was just in North Nashville. I wasn't no need for me. I had cousins that stayed in like East Nashville, like the non-gentrified parts of, well, back then, of Nashville. But like I really didn't interact, for lack of a better words, with white folks, or like white areas per se. What does that say about our city, man? Like,
Man, I mean, what to say about our society? Because I mean, it's definitely an issue in Nashville, but it's an issue every city I've lived in. I mean, is just segregation. I mean, like
Right.
it's the legacy of like legal like enforced segregation, and
Right.
then the ongoing just de facto segregation by more, I don't know. By less overt means, but still, remaining
Right.
segregation. And, yeah, it's really tricky, and it's something that I know I personally want to try to find a way to transcend, because it just we all live in our bubbles, and like. And what happens is like, I grew up in a bubble that was, mainly white. I mean, uh, USN is a school that it is focused and does have a focus on diversity, and it does. They did a good job, I think, of giving me an education that did make me somewhat more aware of issues outside of the privileged, largely white experience. But it is still a privileged, largely white experience.
Right.
It's important to like, kudos to them for like focusing on those things. But
Right.
it's hard to, it's a private school where, I mean, USN and all the private schools locally. When I was going there, I think they were like $10,000 a year, $10 or $11,000 a year. Now, I think USN last year was like $22,000 a year.
It's like tuition.
It's like, yeah,
It is tuition.
I mean, it's nuts, and
Right.
like it's kind of like college. I mean, college, is just every year it's just
Right.
it's off the charts. So the point is like and they're like USN does focus on diversity, and so there were people of color in my
Right.
class, which was great.
Right.
And they, but, it's also economically, it's not very diverse. They have scholarships,
Right.
but, it's still, I mean, that's, I couldn't afford to send my kids to school there,
Right.
if I had kids.
Right. Right.
And so anyway, it's a really, it's, I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to learn how to figure it out, how to make my way, because it creates an experience where then we grow up, and like I look at my friends, and like I don't have a lot of black friends,
Yeah.
and it's like I mean you're my friend, I hope.
Yeah. For sure.
but like
No, we're not friends, Steve.
but but it creates like these bubbles where we don't
Yeah.
even get to we don't
Right.
have an opportunity, and we got to make those opportunities.
Yeah, we gotta definitely be intentional about it, right? Or hope we have people around us, especially as the adolescents, right, to put us in position where we could experience different people, cultures, backgrounds. But then it's that wealth part of it, right? There's no way my parents could afford to send me to USA. No way possible. So with that being said, it's like, well, me and you probably would have never met because
Yeah.
we wasn't traveling to each other's bubbles, right? And then like I couldn't afford to go to the same school as you, right? It's like, so where do we meet? Where do we end up in the same kind of environment, right? In the same city, which at that time, like when Nashville wasn't what it is like today, like this, hundreds of thousands, almost 1 million people in the inner city, or whatever. So now it's I always say Nashville is just diversely segregated, and if it's easy for us just to stay in our comfort zones and not really know what the hell is going on in other sectors of our community. And some people are okay with that. It's like, hey, I'm doing my thing. I can send my kids to this school. I can go to these shopping malls and grocery stores, and I have this area that I'm just gonna stick to. And like, if you don't have it, like that's not my problem. But I always feel like we're all affected by this in some way, form, or fashion, and like we just gotta accept that.
Absolutely, and we got to put an intentional effort to
Right.
to counteract it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really gonna be amazing because we mentioned gentrification, and now we know like a lot of the gentrifiers that are coming into Nashville, they're not sending their kids to the schools that they're like typically zoned to,
Mm-hmm.
right? For example, 28th Avenue North, right? On 28th Avenue North, those kids would be zoned to Pearl Cone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you drive by there today, whoever would have thought like it would be tall and skinnies, and whoever thought, but their kids are not going to Pearl Cone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not going to Pearl Cone. So it's like that. So they're not even using the influence or economic power that they have to benefit the local community or the school system. So it's like,
Oh yeah, I mean it's I mean I can't remember the exact statistics, but Metro Nashville public schools are majority minority. I think like enrollment just in Metro Nashville public schools. Do not quote me, please, because I don't have it pulled. Somebody fact check me right now, because but I believe it's like 60%, whereas 60% people of color,
right.
students of color, whereas Nashville, yeah. So we have the intern fact checking here. Thank you. So Nashville public schools are 25% white. Is that right? 25% white. When the city is what? 70% white?
75-ish?
Right.
Yeah.
So like you see, and like it starts
crazy.
when you're a kid. It starts when you're a kid. And so like we've segregated our kids from the beginning.
Right.
And so once you have that education, I mean, you can fight against it,
Right.
but it's a lot harder, like
Right.
education is the foundation of everything.
Right.
You're not just learning stuff in your school, you're learning social
Right.
interactions on the playground and
Right.
everything that you learn. And so, I mean that's a crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, if you haven't listened to, if your listeners have not listened to, what is the name of that podcast? Maribel Knight, Nashville Public Radio. It's about there's 2 seasons.
Okay.
The first season was about, I think it was about police shootings in
Okay.
Nashville. Second season is about education in Nashville. And we got to find the name of that. It's Nashville Public Radio, Maribel Knight. She won a Peabody Award or something for it.
Wow.
And anyway, it's about 2 schools. It looks at Warner Elementary,
Okay.
which is in East Nashville, and it looks at Laughlin Elementary, and they're like a mile from each other.
Right.
But one is like 90%, 95% white, and the other, both public schools, the other is 95% black. And it's really disturbing. And she breaks down that actually our schools are actually resegregating. So, I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, I've actually got, I remember taking notes on this because it just blew my mind. And if you'll permit me for a second, because I think this is just so important. Man.
The Promise.
The Promise. Thank you. It's called The Promise. And I'll have to see if here we go. I got this. All right. Hopefully you can edit out that dead air. So here's some stats for this. So the Warner Elementary is 90% black. 92% are below the poverty line of the students. 200 of the students there qualify for free and reduced price lunch, which I'm sure it's more than that. That might be a typo on my part. The school, it was in the bottom 5% of state tests.
Wow.
They've turned it around now. There's an incredible principal there. I wish I had his name written down too. Lockland Elementary, it's less than a mile from Warner. There's a wait list to get in. 90% white, 3% are below the poverty line, versus 92% at Warner, which, I wonder if there's a correlation with race there. I don't know.
Right. Right.
The median income for families at Lockland is $96,000.
Wow.
So it's a tale of two cities. It's a tale of two.
Right.
And then just the last thing on this. So our schools are resegregating. So there was busing. There was to fight against segregation, and there was a court case in Tennessee and in Nashville, and it started in the late '60s to enforce desegregation.
Right.
And I think it got reversed or something in the late '90s, and so in 1995, and this is Nashville, Davidson County, 1995, there was just one public school with 90% or more black students. In 2005, there were 12 schools with 90% or more black students. In 2010, there were 20 schools with 90% or more black students. And today, this is a couple of years ago, 35 schools. So we're going backwards.
Right.
We're resegregating. So it's just insanity. It shows what's happened. Everyone has this mind frame, and I have to say, I had this mind frame until pretty recently that we have had a racist past in our country, obviously. Civil rights movement, African American leaders and community helped us realize parts of our democracy by by fighting for their rights to be citizens.
Right.
And there was this feeling, I think, and I can say that I kind of feel like I felt this way too prior to the murder of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter, the resurgence of because Black Lives Matter was always there, but
Right.
people paying attention, white people paying attention rather, that we had a troubled past, but we were on the right path, right?
Right.
that racism was still a problem, but we were making progress.
Right.
And me, Steve Venick, I should be mindful of it, but I don't need to focus on it, right? It's
Right.
not the most important, because we're making progress. We're on the right path. We just
Right.
gotta keep on keeping on. Yeah, no. I mean, clearly,
Right.
because once, and this is just one example, that once there was no longer an intention from our society, and in this case, it was a legal intention, right? We said, we're going to desegregate schools, and we're going to have laws, and we're going to do busing to make sure it happens. Because our neighborhoods are segregated, so we have to bus people to different schools to desegregate. When we said, nah, we're good, we're on the right path, we've done enough of that, well, you can see what happens.
Right.
Resegregation.
And the thing that that gets me about it is that it's amazing that more people, especially since George Floyd, more people are awake to the literal statistics. There's disparity facts. They're there. People like numbers. The numbers point that hey, there's systemic discrimination and racism, structural racism that is still existing and thriving. White supremacy, right? It's the vehicle that drives racism, right? But I don't see no solutions, no actions around solving the problem, right? It's trendy. People are talking about it. People are learning about it. People are reflecting and admitting and acknowledging that it exists. However, I don't see any intentionality from a majority of people on trying to correct and transform those disparities that we see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's my thing. Like, okay, great. We acknowledge it we're starting to acknowledge it more. What are we gonna do to fix? Like, how do we fix this educational thing? Like,
Yeah.
how do we fix that? Like,
Yeah.
what do we need to
Yeah.
do? Do we need to financially back schools more?
Mm-hmm.
That 90% of black folks or people of color attend. What do we need to do? That's what I want to see.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, this should be, and there's a lot of good work happening around like education in Nashville.
Right.
You know, I know, you know, both you and I have been involved with NOAA in the past. They're doing good work around, you know, school to prison pipeline and disproportionate discipline and expulsions of black students.
Right.
But like this issue is like alarm bells should be going off,
Right.
and I really take your point about like what do we do about it? Like what's like something concrete we do?
Right.
Because and I'm confused. Like I'm trying to figure this out. Like I don't know. And you know, I should probably say a little bit about who I am because people just like who is this guy just talking about stuff as if he knows something? I don't know anything, but yeah, I want to know like what do we do about it because.
Right.
What I have felt, and I'm still trying to educate myself, is like as a white person, white person striving to be an ally, I need to be, you know, aware of my of how I might contribute to white privilege, or how I benefit from white privilege, how I might be complicit in white supremacy. I need to support black people and black organizations with you know, dollars if I can, and I need to talk with, you know, my friends, my white friends about this, but it's like, that's not enough.
Right.
Like, what do I really need to be doing?
Right.
You know, it's not enough for me to like soul search about how I'm benefiting and still complicit in structures of racism.
Right.
Like, that's great for me to think about that, and you know that will hopefully lead to action.
Right.
But it seems like there needs to be much more concrete things.
Right.
Like,
so I want to get into that navigation.
Yeah.
But before that, let's talk about what you do. Let's talk about like who Steve Venick is and like the work that you do, like on the grounds and the things that you're into. Just to give people some background, some context.
All right. How much background and how much now?
I really want to. Let's start from like your health and how your health kind of led you into getting to health work and then other organizing work to currently.
So when I was like, I mean, actually, even when I was 8 or 9, my folks remember me having like bouts of real bad pain. But when I was like 11, 12, I started really having really bad leg pain. And as I got older, it got worse and worse. And, you know, soccer had been my life. I was on a travel team. I was like practicing like every day. I was like, this is going to be like my thing, soccer. Couldn't play anymore by the time I was like 13. Couldn't really figure out what was going on. Saw a bunch of doctors. They were like, maybe it's like really bad growing pains. Did some tests. It was something inflammatory, but they weren't sure about it. And it's just like, I saw lots of doctors over the years. They could never figure it out. It got worse and worse and worse. I mean, I tried magnet therapy. There was this thing where like you put these really powerful magnets over, I had it in my hips. I put them on my hips, on my knees, and like it's supposed to help like modulate the pain. I remember I'd be in high school and like if I got too close to my locker, it would like
it'll pull you.
It'll like pull me. So anyway, I just got worse and worse. And by the time I was like 21 in college, I mean I was like, even so in high school, to get through the day, I would wake up. I had trouble like putting on my shoes and my pants in the morning.
Wow.
So I would have to like wake up, get some food in me, take some pain medication. I was taking like super strong prescription Advil basically. Like sort of loosen up a little bit enough to like get my pants on and tie my shoe. Like I had a hard time bending over to tie my shoes. going up and down stairs was really rough. Anyway, by the time I was like 21, like I could not, like, I remember, so I'm almost 6 foot. I'm like 175 now. I was 130 pounds. I remember I used to be able to take my hand and get it like almost all the way around my leg because I just wasted away, you know, like, and so anyway, so I was in real bad shape. Fortunately, I finally saw a doctor, figured out what I had. It's a disease called Ankylosing Spondylitis. It's a really bad form of arthritis that affects your spine. If you don't treat it, eventually your spinal column will fuse. And actually my hips, or the joint where my spine goes into my pelvis, is fused.
Wow.
Not a big deal because you only have like like 6 or 7 degrees of movement. So like it's not a big deal.
Right.
But that's how they diagnose me. They say, oh, look at this x-ray, like it's fused together. So they diagnosed me, finally have a diagnosis. And I'll say that was huge for me because all my adolescence, I mean, I didn't have a very normal, I mean, I was blessed. I was able to make it through each day.
Right.
But like, it was a very isolating experience because I was in pain all the time.
Right.
And I just had to spend a lot of my energy just getting through every day and trying to figure out how to make it. And I didn't want to talk to my friends about it because I didn't want to, you know, I felt really weak because I was really weak.
Right.
And I wanted to try to be strong. So it was I internalized a lot of it. And so that, like, you know, created its whole other issues even later in my life because I just pushed all that down and internalized it. But anyway, long story short, got a diagnosis. Great. Fortunately, there's also this relatively new class of drugs that can help treat me. They'd only been around for 3 or 4 years. This is back in 2005. And you get them all either by infusion. So you have to go to like an outpatient clinic, like get an IV, or injection. And so they were like, you know, you're in bad shape. We're going to give you the strongest one. I go to get an infusion of this medication. I still get it to this day. I've been doing it for, 16 years now.
Would you have to do this for the rest of your life?
Oh yeah, every 10 weeks. Every 10. So I mean, I'm so lucky because I've responded to this drug amazingly. It saved my life. It gave me my life back. I'm relatively pain-free now. I can do almost anything. I can do anything I want to.
Right.
I mean, I started this drug, and over the course of a summer, I gained almost 30 pounds.
Wow.
Because like I was healthy again, you know. Right. My pain went away. I could like walk up and down stairs, and I mean, it was unbelievable. But new drug, it's made from cloned antibodies that they like manipulate and then they inject into you. Like yearly, it varied from like hospital to hospital, but like, and this is why our healthcare system is so messed up. I remember like at St. Thomas, it would be, I think like one would be like $5,000, like each infusion.
Wow.
And it is every 8 to 10 weeks. At Vanderbilt back then, and this is back in 2005, it was like $9,000. So over the course of a year, you're talking like anywhere from like $40,000 to $70,000.
Right.
This is before Obamacare.
Right.
Before the Affordable Care Act. So health insurance companies could deny you coverage based on a pre-existing condition.
Right.
This was a pre-existing condition. I'd had it since I was like, 9 or 10. And so, the insurance company denied coverage. This drug was saving my life. I was already taking it, and so we appealed. Fortunately, I'm so fortunate in so many ways. My mom's a doctor. She was a surgeon. She actually knew the doctor who finally diagnosed me. Like I'd seen, I was up at college in Northwestern, like I'd seen doctors up there. Right. So thanks to my mom, I get connected with a doctor who helped diagnose me finally after 8 or 9 years. And then when my coverage gets denied, thanks to my dad, so my dad's an attorney, you know, and what's more, he's actually worked in healthcare a little bit, you know, he's able to help me appeal to the insurance. And I remember I had this like image of him, you know, on our dining room table. He's got all my EOBs, my explanation of benefits, lined out, trying to figure out, like, because they don't tell you,
Right.
we're denying you based on a pre-existing condition. You know, they deny you here and they cite this, and then they deny you here and they cite this. And so eventually, after going through this, you know, appeal for months and months, you know, my dad couldn't get a straight answer about it. And so, you know, he wrote them a letter on his letterhead saying, you know, we've done this. We don't see why you're denying this claim. We're prepared to move forward, you know, basically threatening legal action.
Right.
And what do you know? What do you know?
They said, hey, okay.
Oh, okay, we'll cover it. So, I mean, thanks to, and what am I? You know, I'm in the top 0.01% of people who happen to have a dad who's a lawyer who can help him litigate against an insurance company to get his drug covered. And so without that, you know, I don't know where I would be today if I had not had that privilege and that. I was in such bad shape. I would, you know, I wasn't gonna die from this disease.
Right.
But like, I was 130 pounds then. I mean, who knows what? So anyway, so that experience just made me realize how screwed up our healthcare system is, how screwed up a lot of things in our society are, and that got me interested in healthcare justice and wanted to get involved in that.
Man, that's an amazing story, man. Like, that was, like, I know I heard it before.
Well,
but I don't think you gave me that much details before. Like, I think you kind of.
Well, I mean, what? I'm not going to give everyone that you know, like, I mean, that kind of like people ask you something that's that's a story right there, man.
I mean,
I'm just so lucky because like I'm healthy. Yeah. Like, if you don't have your health, what do you? I mean,
I think a lot of people are realizing that in the pandemic. Right?
Yeah.
Like, health is crucial.
Yeah.
So got into healthcare justice. What else are you into? Currently.
Yeah. Okay. So I did. I worked like in Chicago for a while doing Affordable Care Act rollout as a community organizer, and that was an incredible experience. And did that for 2 years, and then I worked in some other like health reform related stuff in Washington D.C. for a little while, and then I moved back to Nashville, 2018, and you know, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do. I thought I was going to keep doing the healthcare stuff, but and I thought like coming to Nashville would be a good place for that. But healthcare in Nashville is like healthcare business,
right?
You know, like actually, I don't know what it is, but like, you know, I don't think country music is the #1 industry in Nashville. I think it's healthcare. I mean, it might
it's
be
definitely like the healthcare hub of the
or it might be
United
number
States.
2 or 3, and that's because
HCA,
Hospital Corporation of America, founded by the Frist family, you know, the first for-profit hospital chain, really, I mean, pioneered the way in the corporatization and monetization of the healthcare industry.
Yep.
Founded is based here in town, and so healthcare in Nashville is very business focused.
Right.
And so that was not what I wanted to be about. So I've always wanted to be involved in doing good in the world. And so a
white do-gooder.
I know, right? comes with it. Yeah. We can talk about that too. For sure. So you know, I was trying to find my way. So I worked at Martha O'Brien Center for a while, and I was part of a tutoring program, academic student union program they have at Hunters Lane. They got it at Maplewood 2 and at Stratford.
Okay.
And that was a really incredible experience. And then the pandemic happened. So that was March. Well, tornado happened.
March
3rd, 2020.
Yep.
March 3rd, 2020. So we were at all metro schools were closed for a while. And during that time, I started volunteering in North Nashville, like, you know, every other white person. So you know, I was doing that, and then the pandemic happened, and I got furloughed. Like, you know, we were working in metro schools. Metro schools were closed, so I got furloughed. And at that time, I heard about, through my involvement with NOAA, Nashville Organized for Action and Hope, that the United Methodist Church was kind of spearheading some of the like recovery, the case management for recovery, for the recovery effort, for the long-term recovery effort in Nashville.
Right.
And so, you know, they came on a NOAA meeting. I was furloughed. I applied to this job, and it's sort of like it's the Conference of the United Methodist Church. So like, I didn't know this because I'm not a Christian myself. I was raised Jewish. The Methodist churches, they're like all one. Like there's a conference that oversees all of them.
Right.
And United Methodist Committee on Relief, which does international humanitarian aid. You know, sort of like the Red Cross.
Right.
But domestically, they do disaster recovery long term. So like where the Red Cross comes in and does like the immediate, like, let's get people sheltered and fed, and you know, UMCOR, they help you know, Methodist church conferences do long-term recovery effort, which is like, you know, the like 3 month to like 18-month recovery of like actually rebuilding. Right. So anyway, I started with that, and started first as a caseworker, where we were making phone calls to, everything's remote, right? Right. Making phone calls to lists of people, of tornado survivors that we get from the city, from local organizations, churches, and calling through and just seeing what people need, doing assessments. And then we transitioned to a case management program where, you know, it's disaster case management. So basically, I was I am with my colleagues a disaster case manager, where we just do everything we can to help. We say to walk alongside disaster survivors through the long-term recovery process. So whatever support they need, to whatever's blocking them from recovering, we try to help with that. So it can be a lot of things. It can be all kinds of things. You know, we do a lot of FEMA assistance, because getting through FEMA is kind of like doing your taxes. Right. I mean, you just like we all use a tax preparer to do our taxes, whether it's a software or an actual person. Right. You know, FEMA is like complicated. It's bureaucracy, and so like, you know, it can be very difficult, and like, you know, getting people through that system can be the difference between them getting $2,000 and like $20,000. Wow. So I mean, it can make a huge difference. Right. We do FEMA advocacy and assistance, and then I mean, really anything else people need. We connect them with other local services if they need it, and of course we have access to the donated funds that were after the March 2020 tornado, $12 million was donated, and so we were using that money to, for people who didn't have home insurance and weren't able to rebuild, we would help them rebuild. So we worked with other nonprofits to rebuild homes. We would buy furniture for people. We would, whatever folks needed. Right. So it was a really, and it is a really amazing experience. And I learned a lot just about North Nashville in that experience too.
You mentioned something during the tornado. Like I did what every other white person did, go volunteer, right? Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about navigating working in communities of color or black communities specifically as a white male, wanting to be an ally, and wanting to build?
Talking about navigating it well or navigating it poorly? Because I might have a little bit more experience with the latter.
Well, navigating it I would say, navigating poorly. I would just say poorly in what you've learned navigating it poorly.
A lot of learning.
Yeah.
So,
because I think there's a lot of folks, like, it's a lot of white folks in Nashville, right?
mm-hmm.
And they want to be do-gooders, do-gooders white folks, right? And be on just the right side of like history and try to be an ally, right? But maybe not have the best practices in being an ally. Maybe taking up too much space in these rooms, in these environments that they're trying to intentionally build at, but doing a poor job because they're just doing too much.
Yeah.
Speak on that. And what have you learned from your experience?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was definitely guilty of like taking up too much space, and just in general. For me, this is something I'm still learning so much about and trying to do better on, because like just as a person, and granted I'm a white person, but I feel like also just me, Steve Venick, just kind of, if it were possible to, just have me stripped down to just my personality.
Right.
I'm a guy who like, I like to, I have ideas about how things, how I'm opinionated,
right.
And so I have to really try to check that, because, there are places where it's appropriate for me to share what I think might be the best way to do something, and there are other places where that's not appropriate. And
right.
so that's an ongoing learning for me. But I mean, in terms of what I learned, and what I think everyone can learn, especially anyone who is volunteering in North Nashville after the tornado, is like, it's kind of like the Hippocratic Oath, which is like first do no harm,
Right.
And it is, if you're just doing things thoughtlessly, you're probably doing harm. So like I remember like right after the tornado, this is before, like I was in there. I actually didn't go the first day. I didn't go on March 3rd. I don't think I even went on March 4th, because I actually was like, I'm probably not going to be able to
Right.
do much. I mean, I don't have any skills.
Right.
I'm just a person with two hands,
Right.
But I ended up going, maybe on that second or third day. And I remember just, there's just hundreds of people, and there's nobody kind of leading the charge, or organizing or saying, what you should and shouldn't do.
Right.
Gideon's Army did a great job doing that. They were set up at the Magruder Center. They had training for volunteers that were coming in, and they gave training on like white privilege and not taking up too much space, and stepping back and letting people from North Nashville lead.
Right.
Kate Briefs from Gideon's or from Surge, and she was kind of the volunteer coordinator for Gideon's Army. She did a training, and I sat through that training, and even sitting through that training, I still
Right.
made mistakes,
Right.
but I think what like later on when I was working as a case manager, one of my colleagues gave the analogy, and there's a story, there's a parable, and I can't remember exactly how it goes, but basically it's like, the elephant and the mouse, they're like super good friends, and then like something happens with the mouse, and the elephant hears about it, and so he runs over to help his friend, and he can't find him, and he's running all over the place trying to find his friend. And then he realizes, he looks down, he's trampled the mouse, his friend the mouse, because he was stomping around, he wasn't like being careful, he wasn't taking stock of the fact that he's, a huge, how many tons are elephants?
Many tons.
I don't know. And, a little mouse. So that's kind of like the analogy, right? And there were people, right after the tornado, there were all these people running around, all these white people, but all these people too, not just white people, but mainly white people running around North Nashville, and cutting things down and moving stuff. And, actually that can be really harmful, because I was at a home where we were taking a tree off a house. I didn't see the homeowner. I don't know whether the homeowner wanted that tree taken off that house. I don't know if the homeowner had time to take photos and have their insurance adjuster, if they had homeowner's insurance, come out and look at it and verify it. And that was happening all over the place. So people were just doing things because they see something and they think, there's something I can do. And they're not thinking about, is this actually something that I should be doing? And I'll say, like, one thing that I've learned, and one thing that UMCOR and we go by Disaster Recovery Connection is like our project, our program. It's not like its own nonprofit. It's a project of the Tennessee Conference of the United Methodist Church. But Disaster Recovery Connection, one thing that they are really good about, and that I've learned and that they've taught me, is that, like, this happens all the time in disasters, is that volunteers come and they want to help. And there's a sense that they're here to help and we have to find something for them to do. But if there's nothing useful for a volunteer to do, like, we are good at sometimes saying no to volunteers. Saying, actually, it's not the right time for you to come. I'm not saying this is what happened in North Nashville. But I'm saying, we're now, there was the March 2020 tornado. There was the March 2021 flood. There's the August 2021 flood in Waverly. I was there yesterday. And there are the recent December 2021 tornadoes in Western Kentucky, Mayfield, and a lot in Tennessee. And so,
compounded with a pandemic. Right.
And so, but I think there's this often this urge to, like, we've got these volunteers, we've got to have them do something. But if they're not helping, if they don't have, like, it's about putting the community first and putting the disaster survivor first, and not like, quite frankly, a lot of times it's like appeasing the volunteers. It's not about the volunteers. Anyway, I've
No, that's good. That was great information to share. And I think, let me ask you this. How do you go about addressing other white folks? Because I think that's where the best work is done, when white folks work on white folks. I think I truly believe that. How do you go about addressing other white folks that you may see they're bumping their heads the same way that you were before, or about to cause some harm unknowingly? How do you do that? Have you had experience with that? Has there been pushback trying to do that?
So, I mean, I'll be very honest in that, like, I have not, because we're talking about in my work, basically, I have not yet been able to do that. I've thought about it. But how do you? It's something that need to work on, and I want to try to find a way to do it, but it's so complicated when you think about, this is just hypothetically, but like, what if it's a colleague? What if it's your supervisor? What if it's what if it's and so I mean, yeah. And
what if it's your mom? What if it's your dad?
Right, or what if it's like a partner organization that's like, that is in part of that is working alongside you, and so it is absolutely necessary to do that.
Right.
And it is very difficult. And it is something that I've thought a lot about. Because I hear like I'm like,
right.
That kind of, that's not right. That's
right.
kind of, but actually taking action on it is something that in a work environment, I have not found a way to do. Now, in a personal environment, that's something that I've found ways to do.
Okay.
Because they're people that I have relationships with.
Right.
And
organizations.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Or have you thought about ways to where, because white supremacy exists in nonprofit organizations that are trying to combat white supremacy. It exists. They're there. Do you find it hard in those type of circles or environments to address the harm, the mannerism of white supremacy that are happening in environments where white folks are trying to dismantle or learn how to combat white supremacy?
Yeah, I mean, I think, quite frankly, I have so much to learn on this that I think I still have a lot of blind spots, and it's one thing to like be able to talk to my close friends about, or friends, or but somebody I kind of know because we've been volunteering together, that's, it's like, it's a very personal conversation to have with somebody that you may not have a personal relationship with.
Right.
But it's absolutely critical. And so, I mean, you were talking earlier about like, what do we do? Like what's one thing? And I think you were focused on like concrete like policies, like what can we do?
Right.
But, just thinking more about like, in terms of like white privilege and, white people working in their own community to try to,
because I think that is just as crucial.
Yeah.
Because me saying it to you or another white person, it's expected. Like, oh, okay, another black person telling me, okay, I'm creating harm.
Yeah.
We've heard it. But I think it hits differently when it's one of their peers or somebody that looks like them or somebody that they perceive to have some type of same ideology alignment, right? Tells them, hey, well, actually, you're kind of being destructive and creating harm in these communities by your current actions.
Yeah.
I think that's a different type of humbling and checking that I don't care, and that I really mean this. I don't care if it's your mama, your daddy, your grandparents, your best friend, your girlfriend, boyfriend, your partner in general. Like, I really believe if white folks started doing that, like, intentionally, like, I think so much could change, because like you're all drawing lines now, right?
Yeah.
And then I think you'll learn a lot about your community, and where they stand, or if they're really trying to learn and grow, and really if they're trying to be an ally, or they just stuck in their ways. And, and I really believe, everybody has. You got to give people time to grow and space to grow, and people are forever evolving. But we must be challenged at the same time for that growth to create, I believe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, you're just like touching off a lot of ideas in my head, because I think that, there has to be something more in the white community to address these things, because, I mean, quite frankly, it's, and I've been guilty of this too, since 2020 and Black Lives Matter, it's on my mind in a way that it wasn't before. I'm thinking about racism and structural racism, and I recognize how important it is to fight against it, but at the same time, it's not on everyone's mind the same way it was before.
Right.
And there's been, and especially in the white community,
right.
I feel like it's especially, gone down a little bit, there's not a, and granted, I'm not talking about on Instagram, I'm talking about actual, and so, the question is, and you're talking about what can white people do, is I think there needs to be more of organizing and organizations around that, because up until now I feel like it's been very personal, right? It's I read How to Be an Anti-Racist and I read White Fragility,
right,
and I'm working on it with myself,
right,
but it's not and
it starts there though.
It starts there.
Yeah.
But the next step of okay, in relationship to others and in community, that is probably, I mean, you have to start with yourself, of course,
right,
but it's just as important.
Right.
And so I think there actually has been kind of there's been we haven't taken that next step. We haven't taken it, and I was actually in preparing for this, I was really trying to look around and try to, and I'm signed up with Surge locally, and I've been, I'm not as engaged with that as I probably could be, but I was looking for I don't know, I was looking for podcasts, I was looking for organizations, and I didn't, and please, people that are watching this, if they have something that I should know about, please reach out to me, because I was trying to say what is that next step,
I really believe, look, I'm extreme, and when I believe something, I go let's go all the way 100%, and I really believe that. Just imagine, hypothetical, you're in church, or just not even church, just say you're in a public place.
And I was going to say synagogue.
Yeah,
but
synagogue, synagogue. But say you're in a public place, majority white folks. Let's say it's all white folks. And you know that there is some anti-blackness going on, some harm, destructive. I really believe at that moment, it's for allies to stop what they're doing and call that shit out on the spot. Call it out, address it right then and there, and go live with it. Put it on the spot. I think once you start doing things like that, people are more mindful, because you even see with the Karen movement and stuff like that, right? That has changed white women's thought process on, how they respond to when they see black folks and black males doing things. I don't think I want to end up on YouTube today because of my, implicit biases or my thoughts or, stigmas that I have about people that look like you. I think the more that happens, the more you'll start seeing like more organizational, structural change. But also I think you start seeing people for who they are. Because they either they either was unintentional and didn't mean it and want to grow and learn and it had to be exposed that way and they can move forward, or they may just stay rooted in what they believe and do nothing. But at least everybody is clear. And I think that's one of the best things that could happen. That white allies, I believe, could start doing. Calling, like, it's one thing for me, like, it's expected for me to call it out. Once you see white folks calling out other white folks, it's different.
Yeah.
It's different.
Now, a question for you. Now, do you think, like, let's say I'm out with some friends, like, and I see something like that. Do you think I should call it out right then on this, like, I stop the conversation, or do I, like, afterwards, go up to that person and talk to them and try to have, because, the other thing I'll say is,
I think it's the strategic ways and diplomatic ways to do it. And one of those ways may be a leader. You was talking about like a supervisor or something like that. I think a way to approach something like that is via email. Create a paper trail and do it in a diplomatic way where you're not being like adversary or disrespectful. You just calling out kind of what it is, and then you give them an opportunity to respond, and you don't embarrass them in a way. You don't embarrass them and do that way, but you do. I think you do call it out, and if it doesn't change, because it can make you feel uncomfortable, right? Even as a white person, you're like, this is not something I want to be a part of. Like, then I think you can use that and say, hey, I tried to address this with this supervisor, with this owner 6 months ago. Here's the email. This is how they responded. And I think, like, that needs to be put out there, like, publicly. I believe those people, once those steps have been taken, should be publicly put out there, like, for those type of actions. Because I just think that just changes things. And if you feel that way, be comfortable with letting everybody know you feel that way. Don't hide it. Don't hide your white hate. Put it out there if that's how you feel, so everybody can know if that's if that's what you're truly rooted in. And if you're an ally, don't hide your allyship. Put it out there. This is what I believe. You might lose some Instagram and Facebook friends. For sure. Right? And that's but it is what it is. And I think one, black folks would appreciate that. I appreciate honesty. No matter what side of the coin, like, hey, you clear on what you believe on, hey, I appreciate that. But don't be in the middle. Like, call that shit out. You know, and it is what it is. And I think we'll move forward a lot quicker if we start calling it out. And there's ways to call it out, but we have to call it out and be honest.
Absolutely. I mean, there's the, is MLK Day recently, and there's the quote from a letter from Birmingham jail about white moderates, about white moderates being, even more destructive in some ways to, black liberation than like the diehard racists, because, and I wish I had the quote right here, but I mean, that is, polite society, right? And and it's complicated too, because I'll say, like, I'm totally committed to what you just said, and I'm gonna recommit to that. At the same time, I do want to try to have those conversations in a way that is constructive, because I do also think, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, because I might be wrong, that it's good that people are getting called out, because you can videotape something, you can see that. At the same time, like cancel culture, parts of it are not so great because it shuts down conversations.
And I'm not a fan of cancel culture.
And it shames people, you know.
I'm not a fan of cancel culture. Yeah, I just because like you said, it shuts down conversation, and it doesn't give people. I think it also doesn't give people the opportunity and the privilege to grow. Right, and that's why I'm not really with cancel culture. Like, now it's go ahead.
I mean, it depends on the person. It depends on the person, you know. Like,
well, and because I think cancel culture is fuzzy.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of fuzzy because I look at it like this: if a person is rooted in whatever they're rooted in, they want to stand on that. Fine. Mm-hmm. Like there's many more like him or her. Mm-hmm. Like they're just not saying it. Mm-hmm. I'd rather them say it and like, hey, I respect you more. And if you still want to respect that person, or you still want to respect and or support that person, hey, like because they have a family feed and things like that. And I don't necessarily think somebody's belief should take away from that. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I have a problem with cancel culture. Now I don't have to like you, and I probably didn't support you anyway in general. But like, what are we talking about? Cancel? We like talking about canceling, taking food money out their pocket, their kids' education, a house, home,
and I get
that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but and I get. Well, I guess I was also though not even talking because I mean you're talking about famous people, right? But like I'm talking about like when I think about and what kind when you were talking about calling people out, like yeah, we got to do that. But I think the part of cancel culture that bothers me a little bit is like the shame aspect of it in terms of like not you know it doesn't provide like and you said it doesn't provide an opportunity for the person to grow,
right?
Like they you know they are cut off and they and so when I think about like I want to find a way to call out you know, examples of racism and white privilege, and you know, but I want to do that in a way that I
don't think it's like really no comfortable way to do it.
But maybe there's not, and maybe that impulse from me is like another example of like. You know, the white moderate or like white or white privage trying
that shit
to
is just uncomfortable. Like don't nobody want to be called out for like being a bigot or like carrying white supremacy mannerisms. And I tell this people, I say this all the time. Black folks can have white supremacy mannerisms, self-hate. You know it's all in there, right? And it is embarrassing. It is uncomfortable, but like it is what it is. And like you can either grow from it and do the work and people will appreciate that. You know, have guests come on here and say, hey, I was a racist. I had racist thoughts.
I saw part of that one, yeah.
You know, like people appreciate that, but like they can grow from that. As long as they know and they trying to do the work, I think people appreciate that. But I just don't think there's no really comfortable way to tell somebody like, hey,
yeah, and
you know, they're going to be shameful or they're going to be defensive because maybe they don't even see it.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe they don't even recognize it.
Yeah.
So it's like no.
And I definitely didn't mean you know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's complicated, but it can't be so complicated that you're making excuses, right? Like that's the thing. Like it's you got to be strategic. Like you got like you said, but. If you're saying, and maybe, you know, I've been guilty of this too, is like if you're saying, oh, it's complicated, and it's kind of like, it's too complicated. I can't, you know, I can't, you know.
It's really not that complicated.
No.
It's really not that complicated. It's just very tense, and it can lead to conflict.
Yeah.
And I think people worry probably more about that aspect. Which they categorize it as complex, right? Because like I can know you're a racist, and I might say, "Hey, I don't want you around me like you're a racist," you know. And that can escalate in many ways, or whatever it may be. But like, especially if it's a peer, a loved one, or somebody that may think we're on common cordial grounds, and you come out the door. Well, actually, ... That's a.
So So, but then, I mean, that's one thing. And
Right.
honestly, I'd say like, I don't, I mean, at least in the circles I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a ton of those. I'm very fortunate, you know, in my family and in my friends. But I think what like maybe even not the more important thing, but equally important thing is like not what people are saying or doing, but like what, you know, what my white friends are saying or doing, what my white friends are not saying or not doing, because that's the, I mean, when you talk about like when King was talking about like the white moderates,
Right.
like that's the thing. It's like, yeah, you know, I hear it, I see it, but I'm not gonna like do anything about it, you know, like, and so that's the thing, and that's where, you know, I know like there was a change for me because up until I remember when I was started volunteering with NOAA,
Right.
and NOAA has, you know, its mission statement is anti-racist. You know, it's about, you know, it's about combating, you know, racism, you know, white racism, structural racism. And I remember on the education task force, I was a part of that for a little bit, thinking, and this was just before George Floyd's murder, thinking, well, yeah, it's really important that we focus on the disparities in black education, but shouldn't we like also like, isn't it important for everyone to have a good day? Doesn't all education matter?
Right.
I mean, I was having that thought, you know, because and it's, I mean, now it can sound bad, but I think, you know, it's very common for non-black people to like, let's focus on everyone, you know, right? But it's, you know, I realized when you know, my eyes were opened a little bit, that no, like if you see a horrible instance of injustice, you need to focus on that.
Right.
And you know, and so I say all that just to say that I think like the bigger struggle, at least for me personally, with like my friends and my circle and is not like calling out instances of, although there are subtle like microaggressions that happen here and there that I should do a better job of calling out, but it's really like, hey, like we need to all focus on this. This isn't like, this is, I mean, because it is at least my impression of the way things have gone now since March is like, I mean, yeah, we're thinking about it, but it's not a focus. Like it's not like, you know, we're not focused on it like the way we were in August of 2020. And we need to be like all the time.
And I'm gonna close this out because we can talk forever. We're gonna talk forever.
We'll have to come back.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back.
All right,
it's part 2 for sure. And that's what kind of worries me a little bit. It's not it worries me in general. It becomes a trend. It becomes fashionable. It becomes commercialized, and then like, and everybody's up wanting to do it, and then like it dwindles down and it kind of dissipates a little bit, and then the people that has always been doing it is going to be there. Then everybody else that kind of just jumped on the bandwagon and kind of just wanted to say, hey, look, I did this.
Wait, you mean it's not super important that like Coca-Cola has come out against, you know, or, you know, X corporation is
they have to because it's gonna put more dollars in their pocket and right. That's just gonna and that's why I'm just not the biggest supporter of the NFL, like this with the whole Colin Kaepernick thing. Like it was brave when he did it, and then it just became like, when it became safe to do it, everybody was like kneeling, and it was accepted because they realized like, oh shit, like we're on the wrong side of history here. We need to. So it's like, so I don't know, man. I don't know. Well, I know for myself, and that's why I'm going to continue to keep putting pressure and reminding everybody every single chance I get. And that was my thing on Martin Luther King Day. Like I know people get off. It's a federal holiday, But like people really should go harder on Martin Luther King Day because of like what he fought for, the barriers, and like he never stopped like highlighting the structural racism, the white supremacy that existed, and like each and every one of us should like have that same kind of diligence towards combating it in our own way.
Yeah.
Like we should all have that same diligence toward combating it, like he did. And you know, he got murdered for it. And I don't think all of us want to be martyrs and die for it. But like, you know, for us to just fight it and keep putting pressure every day, and don't forget, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the ways how we continue to move forward, man.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more. And it's kind of like something where, like, I'm realizing now just talking to you because, like, you know, since August 2020, like it's been in my mind, but hasn't been at the front of my mind.
Right.
And am I focusing on it like in my day? You know, when I'm doing my disaster recovery work, is that when I'm at NOAA, is that always my focus? And so I think it just has to be something that we're focusing on. And when I say we, I mean white people.
Right.
Focusing on, you know, all the time.
Right. Yeah, and that's why we got this interview series, this podcast, because it's gonna be it's gonna be every day you're gonna get something.
Yeah.
And get you to think about and reflect on it. For sure.
And the thing is too is like, you know, quite frankly, like this has been the most significant conversation I've had about this in a long time, probably since, you know, I don't know, since late 2020. And so it's like why does it have to be in a podcast or, you know, on YouTube that we have these conversations, you know?
Hey.
I mean, you and I have like conversations, but like I'm talking about like with other people, you know?
Well, like, and that's why literally this is a brave space. And it's for us to have these dialogues that people tend to not want to talk about because they can be uncomfortable and not want to reflect on their own kind of just stuff, right? And that's just me too. I'm always trying to self-reflect and work on me. Because I'm not perfect, and I'm growing and learning, and I learn and grow from these dialogues too. No matter the skin color of the person sitting across from me, and so yeah, man. I think we end it right there, man. With the significance of this conversation, man. Just what more can I ask for, man?
Well, it's ongoing.
Yeah, no, man.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring you back, man.